Hey, I'm Bruno Pedreira, Forage and Crop Livestock Specialist at Kansas State University.
Hello everyone, my name is Liliane Silva. I'm the Forage Specialist for Clemson University.
Hello, my name is Marcelo Wallau, Forage Extension Specialist at the University of Florida, and I'm here to talk a little bit about forage quality. Forage quality, in lay terms, is the nutrient, mineral, and fiber content of our forages, both graze or fed such as hay and silage. In technical terms, we refer to that as nutritive value, and quality is better represented as an animal product because it also takes in account parameters of intake and utilization, and that depends on the interaction between the forage and the animal that we're feeding.
So when we're talking about forage quality, we are often referring to a few parameters, especially if you're just thinking about beef cattle. You might be just referring to the fiber concentration, the fiber percentage, and also crude protein levels in the plant. But then if we're looking at the equine industry, they will also be talking and looking at the soluble sugars on those forages or the feeds that they are going to be using. And also for dairy, we will do a more in-depth analysis and consider several other points on those feeds, just because it's going to be an industry that they're going to be balancing ratios more often and really having to look at the combinations to try to get a certain level of animal performance, which in this case will be milk production. So there's definitely some difference between the animals, the livestock production systems that we're going to be using, and some of the parameters that will be used throughout them.
It's only through a lab analysis that we can determine the nutrient content of our forages, and then farmers can utilize that analysis to balance forage need and supplementation needs of our animals. Different categories of animals, different stages of production are going to require different nutrient needs. And through the analysis, farmers can then balance this animal diet and determine what needs to be supplemented through feed and other sources. This can improve animal performance and also reduce feed waste. When sampling hay, both square or round bales, it's important to divide in batches. Batches based on cutting date, on species, on fields, on management practices, or other interventions that might have affected the nutritive value of that material. We then will pull 10 to 15 cores of this batch of hay, of each batch of hay, compile them, and that makes one sample that we're going to send to the lab. It's important to note that we need to go across the hay for sampling, not from the top to bottom, but across, so we're sampling the different layers that were harvested in the field. Sampling pastures to determine nutritive value is a little tricky because the nutrient content of our pastures can change rapidly based on the forage species, on the management, on the maturity, and also on the season of the year. When sampling pastures, we take hand-plucked samples, cut or plucked to the height the animals are grazing, because that's the better representation of the forage that the animals are actually consuming.
Hey, so when we're talking about forage quality, we definitely need to address the management practices and the impact that those management practices will have on the forage quality. So just for some context, I'm here on a Bermuda grass field. You can see the Bermuda grass on the back here, and also some of the cool season forages that are still somewhat greenish. Some others are just dead already, and the animals will be either eating some of those or just incorporating that back into the soil. We still have some clovers, some things going on here from the cool season, just because the temperatures have contributed to those continue to grow a little further in the season this year. But the Bermuda grass is already growing, and we definitely need to be thinking about the management practices that we are going to be doing on a field every time that we are thinking about managing that field. Because, for example, no matter if you're grazing a field or if you're cutting for hay, if you choose to use a longer than recommended frequency to cut, you will have a material that's going to be more mature and it's going to have more lignin and more fiber on that forage. So you lose some of the quality because there will be also more less crude protein and more steam to leaf ratio. There will be more steam in percentage in total there. So you definitely need to be thinking about those things when we are considering what type of management you're going to be doing on your field. Some other thing to consider, it's gonna be the stubble height that you're using. If you're cutting too short, you're going to be removing more steam, but also you're going to be impacting the ability of those plants to regrow, and that's gonna impact directly on the energy reserves that plants have, and how they're going to be able to continue to persist over time on that field. So it's definitely important to consider and use the proper recommendations for stubble height, for frequency of cutting or grazing, and if you are going to manage those fields under grazing, use rotational grazing. Rotational graze will help you to improve the efficiency of forage removal, and also will help to redistribute the excreta better on those fields. So with that, you would be putting nutrients better distributed on the field, and helping to get a better yield and a better quality as well for those animals that will be moving from paddock to paddock. So it's definitely something important to think about, and the management aspect will be essential for you to have a good forage quality on your field.
When looking at the forage analysis reports, we're always going to look at the dry matter basis reports, because then we can compare different feed sources on the same basis. For most beef cattle producers, we're going to be most interested in total digestible nutrients or digestibility and crude protein. Based on those two values, we can balance most of the rations and most of the requirements of our commercial beef cattle herd. When we go in the dairy side, farmers are getting much more detail, because small changes in fiber digestibility, in fiber content, and other nutrients is going to represent a huge impact in the milk tank. It's always interesting to go over all the parameters whenever you get your analysis report, and also compare the different management practices that you may have applied in your hay field or in your pasture, and how those practices have affected the nutritive value of your hay. This way, you can fine-tune your animal diet needs and achieve better production results. It might be intimidating at first, but tools such as the UF Hay Balancer and other tools available in many of the extension systems across the country are going to help you go through the analysis and match that analysis of that hay and the animal diet needs to see what needs to be supplemented to those animals. Contact your local extension agent and ask for assistance to pulling samples and interpret those results. This can help you improve a lot your operation and reduce cost of production. And remember, test it, don't guess it.